interrupt me.
Surely will. Let me go ahead and welcome Maggie. So tell you a little bit about her. She got her start at the Greater Columbus Chamber of Commerce as the Director of Community Development, mostly managing the YP program. So she is no stranger to some of the faces here. In her remaining time in Columbus, she worked with Yella Public Relations, executing social media management as well as event coordination. Following that role, she spent a year at the Country Club of Columbus as the Member Relations Director. Since then, she has relocated to Seattle to join the outreach team, a Forbes Top 100 cloud technology startup, and is in the product marketing role. In this role, Maggie focuses on outreach partnerships in the technology space, developing co-marketing, co-development, and co-selling plans for the outreach teams. Having experienced firsthand how difficult it is to search for new employment in Columbus and either further outside of Columbus, Maggie has developed a strategy for combining your resume and LinkedIn presence to maximize visibility among recruiters, grow your existing professional network, and translate your online presence to nail the interview. By utilizing this method, she was able to land a dream job with little industry-specific experience and looks forward to helping us do the same. So welcome, Maggie.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm having now technical difficulties after having zero problems while we were sitting on here earlier, so that's great. Let's see. Let's do it this way. Okay, are you guys seeing this now? Wonderful.
Yep, we're good.
Okay. So, Bree, thank you for the lovely introduction. I haven't had to write a bio about myself in a very long time, but really excited to be back with you guys in Columbus. As she mentioned, I'm out here in Seattle, so it's actually morning for me, but obviously a great way to spend my morning with so many friendly faces. I want to offer complete full disclosure to start this that I am not an expert in LinkedIn. I got a crash course in this literally about this same time last year when I made the decision to move from Columbus, which was arguably the biggest decision I've ever made in my life. So it was really important that I kind of got really set up on what it looks like to job search, not only in Columbus, but outside of Columbus, and how you can market yourself and network yourself really just through one platform, and that was LinkedIn. But I also realized that the parallels between LinkedIn and your resume are extremely important, and they're both living, breathing documents. And it's really important that you have both of those things in mind as you are getting ready to either not only look for a new career, grow in the career that you currently have, or just expand the current network that you have and learn and further along your career development. So that's kind of why this is how to get your dream role, but also how to grow in it. So that's what we're going to cover today. Let's see. So here, we'll go over a little bit of the agenda. What we're going to cover is your profile. So basically your basic LinkedIn profile, a summary of who you are that lives on your profile and your experience and how that should differentiate between what you put on your resume and what goes on your LinkedIn. And then your network, who you connect with on LinkedIn, who you try to make connections with on LinkedIn, and the way that you do that well and professionally. And then your growth. So as you're in your role or you're looking for your role, how you can constantly be growing and evolving and learning really just from a LinkedIn platform and the tools that are available from you there. So according to a survey by JobBite recruiters, 87% of recruiters use LinkedIn as part of their candidate search. So that means pretty much the majority of any person who, when you submit a resume or you apply for a job, they're looking at your LinkedIn. That can be, if you're even applying for a job within your own company, they're going to go and do some research on you and try and figure out who you are, not just on paper, what you look like online, how you portray yourself. And so it's really important that you use LinkedIn. So I don't know about you, but I had a LinkedIn when I was in Columbus. It was not a part of my daily routine. It basically just had where I worked. If I got a promotion, I might update my job title, but I definitely didn't fill out anything on the page. I wasn't on it often. I was interacting with other peers or networking with people it just wasn't something that was a part of my workflow until I moved out here. And in the process of moving out here, and in several interviews that I was having with tech companies out here, with nonprofits out here, they were asking, how do you use LinkedIn? Are you on it often? How often do you use LinkedIn? Do you use it as part of your networking? Do you use it as your professional growth? And I was like, I'm on Twitter, like I have Instagram. What do I need to be on LinkedIn for? I don't see anything of value there. And I moved out here and was fortunate to get the job that I landed. And it became very apparent. We have at my company LinkedIn takeover days where we use LinkedIn to just even promote what we're doing at our job and to expand our network. We're obviously a startup, although a much larger startup than when I first joined. We are over 700 people now, but it's still really important that we use LinkedIn as a networking and branding for not only ourselves, but for our companies. So if you are working in small business, if you own a small business, LinkedIn can be a great way for you to expand your network. So if I were to click on your LinkedIn profile and just spend 1 minute on your page, would I walk away with a better idea of who you are? I'm going to assume that if you're not my friend and you're on this webinar, that you really want to learn something today, and you probably don't have a very comprehensive LinkedIn. I wouldn't be able to get an idea of who you are. I might get a good idea of what you've done, but I don't know who you are. I don't know what your daily workflow looks like. So your profile is probably whoever you want the people to think that you are. I think that a lot of times we get imposter syndrome online, and we can just tailor to what everyone else is doing, but it's not authentic. It doesn't really feel like us. And that's the opposite of what you want to do when you're applying for a job, or you're trying to be promoted, or you're trying to gain more of your network. You want people to see you as different, as unique, as something interesting, not just one of many. You want to be the one of few. So what we're going to do is basically in this first half of this kind of webinar is look at your profile, and we're going to start at the top and work our way down. And hopefully as we walk away from this, you walk away with a better idea of how you can edit your LinkedIn and have a more dynamic page. So the headline, just a little help from your headshot. So I'm going to use mine as an example. Like I said, I'm not a professional by any means, but this is what I've learned from the people that I work with. So if you start right up at the top, you want to have a professional banner. So my company provides us with LinkedIn banners. If your company doesn't, I would encourage you to ask them to, because it's just a great way to show off the caliber of the company that you work for. It's a great way to show off awards or recognitions. It's a great way to show off the character of your company. So in June, our company had a LinkedIn banner that was for Pride Month, and we were able to change our LinkedIn banners to show that we were standing in solidarity with our friends and brothers and sisters of that community. And then during Juneteenth, we were able, in the May George Floyd protests, we had some Black Lives Matter banners that we were able to put up. So really it just depends on the time of the year as to what my LinkedIn profile looks like, but it's a representative not only of who I am and what I believe in, but it also is a representation of the kind of company that I work for. So right now we've got some really cool awards that we've been given recently, so we're showing that off. And that's just a great way to do that. If you don't have a company banner, I would just suggest something that is not what you would put on your Facebook cover profile. Please don't put your bridal party or a cute picture of you and your family. That's not what this is for. Pick just a blank design, go on Google and type in LinkedIn banners. There are plenty of options for what you can put on there, but definitely stay away from the cover photo style. Then you're going to want to make sure that you have your current employer. If your employer more than likely has a LinkedIn page, you're going to want to link to that. So they can click on that page and see how many employees are there, the kind of size of company that you work for. And then you also want to make sure that you link your education. If you've got master's degrees or doctorates, you want to make sure that those are also listed right there. So when you look at your page, the first snapshot they get is, okay, this is a person who's fully employed. They've got great education. I recognize that university. Make sure you link to that university. And if you are a business owner or you work for a company that doesn't have a LinkedIn page, make sure, ask them to create one for you, because it needs to give that validation that you actually work for the people you say you work for, and that they're a real company and they have a real presence online. And then I cannot stress this enough, a professional headshot. This isn't the place for you to post your selfies or your Snapchat filtered picture. This is a place for you to display who you are professionally. And I was very fortunate, now this is a blurry photo, but to have mine taken for free at my last job. But with the way cameras are these days on phones and your friends, you can go outside and get a great picture of you in a blazer and just, or, you know, something nice that represents your aesthetic and have that be your profile picture. You don't want people to look at your page and think that you don't take yourself seriously. And then also, what do you do and where do you live? So your headline lives right underneath your name. If you are someone who maybe you're fully employed as a teacher, but on the side you do graphic design, you could say, I am graphic designer by night, teacher by day at so-and-so. You don't necessarily have to have it be your exact job title. So my job title is a little more granular than partner marketer, but that's essentially what I do. So I'm a partner marketer for outreach, and that's my headline. If you don't fill that in, it will just auto-populate for whoever you work for and what your current title is. So take the time, 2 seconds, to customize that, to give a better idea. If you are, you know, customer success manager for, what does that really mean? Are you more of a senior level customer success manager? Or are you lead customer success manager? Make it simple for people to understand what you do in just that quick snapshot. And then where you're located, because if you're open to work, which is a section that you can, I would encourage anyone to always have on their LinkedIn, check that you're open to work. It's a great way for you to say, hey, I'm interested in new opportunities. I might not leave my company, but it's a great way for you to maybe get an offer or get a better idea of what's out there. And then you can go back to your current company and say, hey, look, I'm getting messages from recruiters asking me about these jobs. Like, what's the career growth look like here? It's just a great way to open the conversation without any real formal commitment. But make sure you have your location there. And then you can also say where you're open to living, just in your internal settings for recruiters. So obviously mine says Seattle, Washington. We'll keep going. So this is the really fun part. And it's, you have 30 seconds to pitch yourself. Can you do it? Obviously, I'm a talker. That's really hard for me to do, is just to succinctly say, here's who I am in 30 seconds. But it's really important that that happens, because what you're going to realize is, as I'm a recruiter or I'm an HR or I'm the hiring manager and I get hundreds of resumes or even 10 resumes and I look through all of them, I get an idea of what your professional experience is. And then the next thing I do is go to your LinkedIn and I look at your summary. And that gives me an opportunity to see, who is this person? What are they passionate about? In literally a quick 30 seconds or less. So that's your opportunity to pitch yourself without ever even getting an interview yet. So we're going to work on that together. The summary is what's lives underneath your headline. It's basically your about section. And it allows you to explain what you're about, the impact that you make on others in your work, and then basically just a quick pitch, literally 30 seconds or less. So I know everyone's on their computers. Hopefully you can open up a Google Doc or a sheet or a note. And we're going to work through this together. I know that that's a painful process, but I promise you it's a quick exercise, and it really is helpful for you to walk away from this and actually put this summary. I actually kind of reworked mine as I was putting this presentation together, but basically we're going to figure out who you are, what do you do, and then we're going to bring everybody home in that last minute pitch to your kind of closing sentence. So here's our first thought. So who are you really? What are you known for? What's your identity, and how does your work help other people? No matter what your role is, what your profession is, what you do, ultimately you serve a customer, a member, you have someone that you work for, a service that you provide, and how does that help people? How does that help the world in general? Because that's what you wake up for every morning going to work. So what I want everybody to do, I'm going to use mine as an example throughout this, but obviously it's definitely not perfect, so feel free to kind of take your own. But we're going to work on this first sentence. So it's really quick, succinct. Who are you really? So for mine, it's every day I build and maintain relationships with strategic partners in the technology and SaaS space. So a little bit about my role. I work for a startup technology company. We sell a sales software service. And we have basically, look at it like the App Store. So my job is to work with all of the members of our App Store. I have about 80 partners that I manage our relationships with, I do marketing with, we develop integrations together. And so it's my job to maintain those relationships, but also make sure that they're strategic and that they are in line with our mission and our vision as a company. And yeah, that's what I do. Every day I wake up and I work with partners and I build relationships. And if you know me at all, relationships are very important to me. So it's really important that that is a key line in my first sentence, that they get a genuine idea that my job reflects who I am as a person, and it's building relationships with people. So I'm going to give you about a minute to just kind of knock that out. I promise I won't have awkward silence for too long, but I think it is really helpful that you guys don't just sit in a webinar for an hour and get nothing out of it. So I want you to walk away with something that you can actually put into action. So I'm literally setting a timer for 1 minute and go. We'll come back from that. In the meantime, I'm going to try and figure out how to move this. Oops, sorry. Jumped ahead. There we go. About 30 seconds. Okay. Minute is up. Moving on to our next part. What do you do? So this one should be a little bit easier for you. You should know what your job is. You should know what your current role is. What do you do? What's your title in your company? Briefly, keep in mind this is a 30-second pitch. What do you do at your job? Again, it's important to emphasize how you help other people, how you're serving people in this role. And then specialties or areas of expertise if you feel like you need to kind of dig into that role a little bit further. So maybe you're a IT person and your job is to protect the security of your customers, but you need to talk about how you have a specialty in a certain software or certain management that you use. You just want to dig in a little bit more in that detail. That's totally fine to do there. So for example, in my role as the only partner marketer at Outreach, I wanted to call that out in mind because I work at a startup, so we're stretched thin. So the role that I do is large for a company. For example, our main competitor, there's 7 people that do my job. So it's a fun thing to call that out to show what I'm capable of in that small role or that small sentence. But as the only partner marketer at Outreach, I work with our partners to drive tactical partnership conversations, take new integrations to market, co-market our joint value propositions, and develop new and innovative ways to break through the virtual noise. As Outreach grows, so do our partners. I cross-function with our marketing, sales, and product teams to ensure our partners are aligned with Outreach's progression. So you'll see some buzzwords in there, but they're not your really annoying buzzwords. Like they're not hardworking, driven. It really talks about what I do in that role. I'm not trying to just be pitchy or catchy. Like I want people to get a really good understanding of who I am when they look at that sentence. But also I have the ability to show how I don't only work in just marketing. So if maybe I'm applying for a job that's more product focused in my next role, I can show that I've already worked with product teams in my last role, just in that one summary, that if you saw my resume, you might not get that because you just see marketing. So that's really important to show that. So I'll go ahead and give you guys another minute to kind of knock that sentence out. Hopefully you have a good idea of what you do in your role, but should be fairly easy for you to accomplish that. Thirty seconds. All right, now the last part. We're going to bring them home. So you want to have a strong closing sentence. You want to make sure that you have a powerful closing, that people walk away with an idea of who you are, what your mission is as a working professional, what are you passionate about? Does your company have core values? So Outreach, a lot of companies have a vision and mission statement, but they also have core values that embody who they are. and what they want their employees to be. And so it's important that you can maybe use those to work into what you do. And part of your summary, it's just kind of an easy get to kind of add those phrases. There's my dog. So here's my example. At my core, I thrive on strong relationships. My job allows me, there's a typo, sorry, to not only strengthen internal relationships at Outreach across multiple teams, but embody our core values to our partners by having their back as well. So one of Outreach's core values is we have each other's back. We've got your back, and not only do we have our customers back, we have our fellow colleagues back. So in my case, I have our partners back. And so it's just a great way to show a little bit of the personality of Outreach in my own summary. And I think it's just a great way to sum up who I am at my core. So I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes to kind of wrap it all up together, make sure it feels concise. If you have any questions, now's a great time to hop in and ask. I'm happy to try and do that. But yeah, we'll do 2 minutes here. One minute. And I promise I'm not going to have you guys read these out. If anyone's fearful of that, I'm not going to make you raise your hand and read it out. Thirty seconds. Okay, so wrap it all up all together now. This is my summary on my page, but just so you can kind of see an idea of how it all flows together. Every day I build and maintain relationships with strategic partners in the technology and SaaS space. As the only partner, if you don't know what SaaS is, sorry, software as a service. I did not know what it was 8 months ago, so you're not alone. As the only partner marketer for Outreach, I work with our partners to drive tactical partnership conversations, take new integrations to market, co-market our joint value propositions, and develop new and innovative ways to break through the noise. As Outreach grows, so do our partners. I cross-function with our marketing, sales, and product teams to ensure our partners are aligned with Outreach's progression. At my core, I thrive on strong relationships. My job allows me to not only strengthen internal relationships across multiple teams at Outreach, but embody our core values to our partners by having their back as well. Less than 30 seconds, but I feel like you have generally a good idea of who I am, what I do in this role, what wakes me up every day, what gets me excited to work. But it also gives you a good idea if you're looking to hire me of the kind of person I am and the kind of worker I could be for your company, and how I could serve your customers or your partners. So this is where things get really fun, because your experience is something that we're all really passionate about and proud of. After all, it's what you've spent your career building. So it's really interesting to try and figure out what the balance is of what should live on your resume versus what should live on your LinkedIn. So your resume should be a really succinct document that showcases your professional career. LinkedIn experience allows you to expand upon those roles and responsibilities that you maybe had to cut from that one sheet of paper. So we're going to kind of look through some of these, but how you can update your job experience, maybe where you've worked, what your job had entailed at that company. This is a great way on LinkedIn to include part-time or freelance work. So maybe on the side, you're a social media marketer, and that's a career that you really want to jump into, but all you've done is manage a couple of accounts, so it may not fit on your resume the way that it should. your LinkedIn is a great way to show that and to link out to your portfolio or different campaigns that you may have run or pages that you manage. Or if you're a web designer, that's another great way to do that. But then also it's so important to include your volunteer experience. That's also oftentimes something that gets cut on a resume once you get further along in your career and you have more jobs that you've got to try and fit on that piece of paper. Argued with my boyfriend about this morning. Industry standard still is one sheet for your resume. It can squeeze down into two, but think about it. If you're looking for a job or you're looking to hire someone, you really are just looking through that first page to see if it catches your eye. And so volunteer experience does kind of get put on the wayside, but it is so important. I mean, all of you guys are YP members, you know what it means to give back to your community. So that's a great place to highlight that on your LinkedIn, is the type of organizations that you volunteer for, maybe events that you've managed, or you volunteered on the event board for, things like that. So here's how we're going to kind of compare the two, resume versus your LinkedIn profile. There'll be a formal tone. We're going to dig into these a little bit more, but there's a formal tone on your resume versus a social on your LinkedIn. So you're formally talking to the person who might hire you on your resume, and you're maybe talking in the third person and sometimes. And then on your LinkedIn, this is a conversational environment. This is who you are. This is where you show your personality. And then on your resume, like I said, it's brief. It's one page. It's so much information squeezed into one. The font can only shrink so small. Whereas LinkedIn, it can go on as long as you want. You can add endless career experiences to that. And then your resume is more of a final document, and your LinkedIn is always evolving. It's dynamic. It should be edited often to add new experience, to add new things that you've done. Your resume should really only be updated as much as you update your career and as long as you progress in your career. But there are exceptions to that rule, and I'll get into that in just a second. So tone, your resume should have a formal tone. This is a great tip that I was given and literally changed my career trajectory last year when I was applying for jobs. I had been going through the rabbit hole of just uploading a resume that I had made that was so pretty in Canva, and it was great. It showed off my marketing side, and I just loved the way it looked, but it was not formal. And when I was applying for these jobs, it was just getting sent to the bottom of the pile. And so I reached out to a friend who works in HR and recruiting. And he was like, unfortunately, this is not the formatting that you need to use. It's really pretty, girl, but that's not it. And so it's a blank Word document. But he also sent me one of those word cloud sites. So, you know, when you can upload a job description or a paragraph into a word cloud, and it pulls out the words that are used the most, and it makes a pretty word cloud for you. People do it on Facebook all the time of the words that you use the most. You can do that with job descriptions. So take that job description, copy and paste it into that word cloud website. I can send you several if you want. And then it'll pull out the words that pop up the most in that job description. And so if those words apply to you, what you should do is when you go to your resume, put those words in your resume. Make sure if it says that they want someone with graphic design experience, and you see graphic design 1,000 times, that if you have that, make sure that's in there. If they want a strategic thinker and they want a hard worker or a team player, and that's one of those big words in that word cloud, put that in your resume, because what that does is if you're applying for a larger role at a larger company and it's getting sent through HR software, yes, that exists, it will pull your resume to the top because you hit a certain percentage of the same words that they're looking for. Not saying that if you don't do that, you just will be totally ignored, but it definitely increases your percentage, because from experience, when I shifted and started doing my resume like that, I had 3 interviews the very next day, callbacks from jobs in Seattle that I had just been hitting a dead end. So it really does work. And that's why I say that even though your resume is static and it's something that really only evolves, every job that you apply for, you need to literally change your resume and say, I uploaded this job description into the word cloud. I pulled these words out, and you need to go back in and optimize your resume for that job description. And then you send that resume on. So the meat of your resume doesn't change, but the words that you use does. And maybe some of the projects that you manage or the significant things in your career might be pulled out and subbed based off of what that job description is looking for. So that's so important. And then you also need to consider who the reader is and the location. So think about it this way. If you are applying for a job and the recruiter gets your resume and reads through it, all they're doing is looking at your resume and saying, is this what the hiring manager is looking for? Do they check those boxes? Yes, great. Passing that on to the hiring manager. The hiring manager looks at it and says, yeah, this person's great on paper, but what do they really like in person? So they go to your LinkedIn and look at your LinkedIn. think about the reader who's looking at your LinkedIn. Is it the person you're going to work for, or is it the person who is just looking to see if you check the boxes? Ideally, it's probably the person you're going to work for. So you want to make sure that you're speaking in a tone that makes sense to that person, that you are showing your personality, that you're showing the kind of worker that you are. That's why we wrote that summary. That is more about who you are and what you're passionate about, and less about how good you look on paper.
Maggie, while we're on tone, resume, and experience, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Where do you suggest positioning your freelance information on your LinkedIn profile?
So I make mine, basically when I was in Columbus, I did part-time work for the Columbus Lions, the Cottonmouths. And so that was like a freelance kind of contracting thing that I did on the side. But it showed that I could do broadcasting. It showed that I could do social media management and event coordination in a different way. And so I just created those as small job descriptions on like experience and the experience side, and then listed out what my role was, what I managed, and just says there's an option on LinkedIn to say full-time or part-time. And so I just said part-time. And so you can, in your experience underneath that description, you say independent contractor managing X, Y, and Z, and you go down and you kind of explain more about what that role is. Does that answer that?
Thank you.
No problem. So this is a great way. I was having this conversation this morning. Brief resume, longer LinkedIn profile. So resumes are highly condensed timelines. And as you grow in your career, your experience also grows, but that's really frustrating because some of my best work I ever did was at the chamber. Some of the biggest projects I managed at the chamber, and that was my first job. So I had had 2 roles between the chamber and me moving to Seattle. So I was trying to figure out, how do I show the vastness of what I did there, but not cut out the other things that I was doing in the 2 roles between the chamber and moving to Seattle. And so sometimes that just has to happen. You have to still have to cut those things to keep your resume to 1 page. But what I was able to do was take my LinkedIn and describe more in depth of what I did at the chamber in my LinkedIn in that experience. I could highlight projects that I managed, whereas on my resume, it was just, here's the role I had at the chamber, here are 2 or 3 bullet points of what I did. Because then as you get higher up in your career, you need to go more in depth of what you're doing now. That recruiter, that hiring manager doesn't really care on your resume about what you did your first job out of college. They care about what you've been doing the last 3 years. But those things are still important. So you don't want to just cut those. You move them to your LinkedIn. You figure out what's really important, the things that you still want to call out, and you add them there. So kind of talked about that, but don't get too wordy. Like I said, still needs to be, succinct formats on both of those. Don't write a paragraph about one event that you managed that went really well, or one account that you landed, or anything like that. Still keep it succinct, because they're just scrolling through, and you have to think, if they're looking at your LinkedIn profile, they're also looking at probably 10 or 15 more. So you want to make sure that you're still calling it out, but it's a great way to be able to showcase things that you couldn't on your resume. This is kind of saying the same thing, but resumes should be static. LinkedIn is ever evolving and dynamic. So I've talked about this earlier. Always update your resume for each job description. The content shouldn't change too much, but you do want to make sure that you are keeping in mind that you're personalizing that resume for the job that you're applying for. So as I mentioned earlier, outreach has core values. So when I was applying for outreach, I went and looked at their website, saw what their core values were. Having grit is one of them. Valuing diversity and inclusion is one of them. And so it was really important that in my resume that I called those things out, that I'm a person who has grit, that I work hard, that I'm not afraid of a job, that I value working in a diverse team that's inclusive. That's really important. And then I can do that in my LinkedIn as well and show how I've done that in my LinkedIn. So that can always be changing. LinkedIn can always be changing based off of things that you do, but your resume the meat of it should really stay the same throughout the years as you just kind of update based on your current experience and maybe promotions that you have. Another great thing on LinkedIn is you can actually link out and kind of feature these on your profile, portfolios, projects that you've done, websites that you've worked on, web articles that you've been highlighted in, maybe awards that you've been given. You can link those out. So for my job right now, I write a monthly blog for our partners. And so I have those linked on my resume, on my LinkedIn, to show that I can do content, I can write content, I understand technology. It just gives a good idea of some of the work that I produce in my current role. And so those links can always be changed. You can change them every day if you want. You can change them based off of what's popular in that month for you. But it's a great way to showcase things that, think about your resume as just a document. So you can't add hyperlinks. You can't link your resumes or your portfolios or anything you've done. That's a great way to do that on your LinkedIn, and it calls it out right with their attention. Your network. So you're obviously a member of YP. You love to connect with people, or you're trying to be better at connecting with people. But the more important thing is you're doing it. And LinkedIn is a great way to help you continue to do that through connections. So it's super important that you take connections seriously and that you make valuable connections. Don't just connect with any Joe Schmo that sends you a request, because that's not helping you. Connect with your colleagues so that you can see how they represent themselves online. Connect with recruiters at companies that you might like. Connect with future employers. So if you can see some hiring managers, or you see some people in roles that you think you might want to have one day at companies, connect with those people, see how they demonstrate themselves online, read through their summaries and experience of projects that they've managed, so you get a better idea of things that you need to try to accomplish in your career to get to their level. And also follow companies. So like I mentioned earlier, if your company doesn't have a LinkedIn, hopefully they do, follow companies that you like. Follow the same way that you would follow a brand on Instagram. You want to follow companies on LinkedIn to get an idea of who they are. That's a great way to understand the company that you're going maybe to work for, is by following their LinkedIn. What are awards that they've been given recently? What are articles that they're featured in? What are new, if they're sorry, I'm in tech, but like a new product that they've rolled out, or if they're in insurance, what are new packaging that they have? How are they treating their customers? That's just a great way to really understand the company that you're looking at. And then here's just a fun tip that I learned when I moved out here. I did not know this before, but connections are always more successful when you write a note with that connection request. So if you are going to send someone a connection request, you don't know them, you don't have any connections in common, but maybe they're a person at a company. If we use Coco example, they're a director at another university, and you want to follow them and connect with them for professional networking, shoot them a note in that connection and just say, hi, I'm Courtney Laughlin, I'm this at the Leadership Institute at Columbus State University, and I just would love to connect with you and grow my professional network. Love what you do on your profile, whatever. But they just let those people know, one, that you're not a bot if you're just a connection and you have zero mutual connections, but two, just that you're taking a little bit of extra time to make that note and say, hey, I'm taking this seriously, I'm a professional person and I want to connect with you. And those go so much further, and you'll get so many more connections than if you just send, if you go to your LinkedIn after this and just fire off 30 connection requests. Interact with people and content. So that's a great way to get an idea of who a person is to go, imagine if you could go on Facebook, similar to Twitter, but if you go on Facebook, you could see anytime someone liked a status or they commented on something in just one succinct place. LinkedIn does that. So this is kind of a catch-22. Be aware of what you're liking and the content that you're engaging with and the comments that you're leaving, because it does show up on your personal page. But it's a great way to interact with content. So maybe you like a piece of content, or you like a blog, or just a status that someone made. That's a great way to do that. But it also shows that you're engaging in your LinkedIn. It pushes you in the algorithm more, so you show up more in people's feeds. But if you just have a very blah kind of presence online, you're not there at all, you're not very active. It shows that you don't take your LinkedIn very seriously. I don't love to post a lot on LinkedIn. We have several people on our team who are literally LinkedIn influencers, and they have thousands of followers and they have tons of interaction all the time. That's not me. I'm not going to go on and write this thought-provoking post every day, but I am going to engage with content that I like, that I think that is valuable. And that shows that I'm at least on LinkedIn. I'm checking my profile, I'm checking my network, and I'm engaging with them. Also, you can join professional networking groups on LinkedIn that post a lot of valuable content, post a lot of valuable free webinars that you can attend, trainings, things like that. Like I'm a member of a product marketing association. There's just a lot of really free ways to join groups there. And I just encourage you to look and to dig into that. Even maybe networking groups of career fields that you're interested in, but have never really kind of got an idea of what it is, or you've been too scared to maybe research it. That's a great way to just get an idea of who the people are in those roles, and if that's a role that you really want to try and move into. Your growth. So a lot of us are probably already in roles in our current careers, and maybe it is we're thinking about growing upwards in that role, or maybe we're trying to figure out if it's time to step outside of the industry that we're in. And how do you know that that's the right thing to do? And it can be a really hard process. So take advantage of the free stuff. That's the best thing about COVID this year, y'all, is that things are free that used to cost money online. So we are in a virtual world with tons of free webinars all of the time. For professional growth, part of my job is creating webinar content for outreach, and 9 times out of 10, it's just thought leadership. And I learn a lot just from listening to our leaders at our company host webinars. And so there's a great way to do that in your industry, is just to go look online, look for webinars that are engaging about what you're trying to learn, and register for them. Put yourself out there. And even if you don't have the time to take an hour out of your day to listen to that webinar, you're going to get the recording afterwards. So put it in your ears, go for a run, walk, like it's a podcast, and just listen to some good content and learn. Same thing, read blogs about the field that you're in. I know this is awkward, but attend virtual networking events. We're also trying to figure out this Zoom stuff, but it's a great way to meet people and to just expand that network even more so, and really put faces and personalities to names that you can't, even with a very dynamic LinkedIn profile. Pay attention to your network. So like I mentioned earlier, it's a cautionary tale of being careful of who you engage with online and the things that you comment, and that it always is traced back to you and is shown on your profile. Take note of how your colleagues represent themselves online. Is that a behavior that you want to mirror, or is it something that you want to steer away from? And are you constantly learning from your peers? Maybe there's someone in your role above you and you want their job one day, or you want to be a peer to them and not someone that reports to them. Pay attention to how they act online. What are the things that they engage with? What's the content that they're liking? Maybe you should read that. That's just a great way to learn without having to put in a lot of effort, by just being observant. Very easy to do. This is a great way to grow. Browse job postings. LinkedIn is just such a rich place to find good jobs, and it's not as cloudy or muddy as an Indeed or a ZipRecruiter, where there's just like McDonald's manager and then director of the Leadership Institute on the same page. It's really hard to figure out how to do both of those things, but LinkedIn, there's a lot of great filters that you can search through. You get really good idea if you want to pay for the premium. I did when I was looking for jobs. I don't now, but you get a good idea of the people that are applying for roles that maybe you're interested in. It gives you an idea of what the salary is of the job that you're looking at, and if it's something that you even want to put the time into uploading your resume and going through that whole process. But it's also a great way to get notified of if there's opportunity for promotions in your current role. So maybe your company is posting their job descriptions to LinkedIn and you had no idea that there was a role above you that's coming open. Or maybe there's a role within your company that you've been looking at that you didn't know they had created a position for. Look for that job opportunity and say, oh, hey, like this is at my own company and I match everything on this job description. Let me throw my hat in the ring for this. It's just a great way to be notified of what's happening, and not only in your current role, but also in the community that you live in. You can set your settings to only let you know about jobs in Columbus if you want, or if you're interested in moving and you don't really want to put a lot of work in, and maybe fate will have it, then just set your job alerts to Atlanta or wherever you want it to be. But LinkedIn has a lot of great tools that will help you to do that. This is my favorite Maggieism, and it's no one will advocate more for you than you. And that has been my kind of lifeline of my career, is the best way to put yourself forward is to put yourself forward yourself, and to look out for yourself, advocate for yourself. And an easy way to do that is through your LinkedIn and your resume, and making sure that they are really tight and are a great example of who you are professionally and who you hope to be professionally. And really just shows off your personality in a way that maybe a Facebook or a Twitter or an Instagram can't do. So with that, anybody have questions? Happy to answer them. Happy to connect offline. This is my personal email address. You follow me on LinkedIn. Like I said, I am not a professional in this by any means, but I do try and do a good job of keeping up on my LinkedIn and connecting with people there. So happy to answer questions now if there are any.
Thank you for that, Maggie. Although you are no expert, this was very informative, and you have given us a lot of information, especially I know for myself, just getting into the LinkedIn beast. It can seem overwhelming when you don't know the back end of it. So I thank you for walking us through the basics of our profiles. And again, if there are any questions, go ahead and shoot them at us. I know Lauren did make a comment during the presentation that she puts her freelance information second. She puts it right under her main job. So that's a tip for anyone who's interested in adding their side hustles to their profile.
Yeah, that's a great way. A great point, Lauren, is just don't make your date ending. So in your experience basically say like start date, end date. So it's a living, breathing role if it just is currently like start date 2016 and it's still going. So that's a great way to make sure it always stays at the top.
All right, any more questions? Well, if you're interested in having a discussion with Maggie, please connect with her on LinkedIn and do it the correct way. Send a message as well when you're making that connection. But thank you all for attending. And Kayla, I will let you close us out if there's anything that you would like to share about upcoming events.
No, not really. Thank you, Maggie. I know nothing about LinkedIn, so this was definitely helpful. But if you guys just want to keep up with social media, we're going to have probably 2 more events coming up for the rest of the year. We have another trivia coming up, and then we will have a bike ride and a fun little holiday party, so stay tuned. But other than that, thank you, Maggie, and we'll see y'all later.
Thank you, everyone. See y'all.